Hello, Miami University and all Oxford community. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Nia, your co-host for tonight's show. Happy Women's History Month, and here's your latest Miami University news.
Welcome back to Miami Television News. It's been 1 year since students were sent home from Miami because of COVID-19. In the year since the pandemic began, there have been many changes and disruptions in our everyday lives. But there are several developments happening that are making the return to normalcy seem a little bit closer.
Governor DeWine recently announced that Ohio citizens 16 years and older will be eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Miami University has also recently announced new COVID regulations affecting on-campus students. The new policy states if any student fails to schedule or show up to a COVID test more than one time, that student can be evicted from the residence hall and lose access to meal plan and options to attend classes in person.
Many of the saliva samples collected during COVID-19 tests are examined in Miami's microbiology labs. But that's not the only thing happening over in the department. Many students are struggling to gain lab experience due to new COVID-19 restrictions, causing setbacks for many microbiology majors. Ryan Jones and I caught up with a few of them to learn about their experience.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic began, STEM majors have been struggling to balance safety precautions and precious lab time. Here's Hannah Horsington with the story.
Junior microbiology major Maylee Aiello has spent countless hours in the lab during her 3 years at Miami. But this year, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, things are looking a little different.
I do have a few lab courses that are in person. However, they are not what they used to be.
Lab spaces in Miami's microbiology department have also become scarce. Some labs have been reserved for testing saliva samples collected during university COVID tests, while others are just too small to allow for more than a few people.
The lab spaces are not very big, and so a lot of them you can only have 2 or 3, maybe 4 people in the lab at any one time, which really limits bringing in undergrads when you have graduate students who are in the lab full time.
In the past, undergraduate students often accessed lab spaces by working on projects led by graduate students. Now that many grad students are forced to work alone, first and second years are losing this valuable experience.
This semester, students taking introductory courses are finding their lab time decreasing drastically. They now only get to spend about an hour a week in the lab, less than half the time they had before the pandemic.
This lack of lab experience is causing problems for some students when it comes to learning the basic skills required for their major.
One thing that is noticeable is that after not being in person for a year, sometimes students that are even sophomores or juniors don't have a solid foundation of lab techniques.
Although Miami announced that classes will be fully in person in the fall, Aiello says that the effects of the pandemic will remain for some time.
COVID shutting everything down was a big setback.
Starting in fall 2021, Miami is aiming to return to all in-person classes after a year of online learning. With this news, Miami also came to the decision to have commencement in person for the class of 2021.
In light of COVID restrictions being lifted, study abroad programs will be continuing for this summer and beyond. MTN's own Jonathan Myro got the chance to speak with one of the members of the Outdoor Pursuit Center about going abroad.
Why should people study abroad?
I think people should study abroad because it allows for a more intimate, personal experience. Taking normal classes here at Miami, they're kind of parceled out in 55 and 80-minute, 2-hour sections throughout a week, throughout a semester. And we can give you little nuggets of information, little moments of experience. Obviously, there's assignments out of class where things can continue to happen, but in study abroad, you're fully immersed, brought together, and kind of unable to get away, if you will. We kind of force you to come together, and I'm specifically kind of thinking of our Outdoor Pursuit, Outdoor Leadership study abroad trips that we offer, where everyone just has to kind of come together, and those moments can cause life-changing experiences, as opposed to just little nuggets of information here and there.
What are the highlights of the program?
The highlights of the program. So in our summer study abroad program, Outdoor Leadership in New Zealand, first of all, we take you to New Zealand as part of the program fee that comes in with that trip, and so we travel there. We're primarily on the South Island, And there, the class or the requirements of the class is that we give you the tools and how to lead the group. And so student leaders will step up in groups of 2, 3, or 4 per group, where you'll be actually the one determining a lot of the details within each leg of the trip.
Right, and how hard is it to adapt to the different dialect in New Zealand?
You know what? We interact with them at times, certainly, and English is spoken enough that there's only a few slang words, truthfully, that we run into, and it's really not an issue that I can say anyone's ever really had a problem. There's just simply a couple of phrases that are used in more commonplace that we don't even necessarily get to, because we're more often at the grocery store when we interact with locals, or we do spend a night at a marae, which is the heritage, the Maori people from New Zealand have these kind of historical centers, and there's several maraes on the islands, and we'll spend an overnight there. And so they'll kind of show or demonstrate and speak in some of the native tongue, and that's not a dialect. We simply won't understand, but they'll immediately follow it with the translation in order to make it an educational experience. So yeah, it's really not an issue. That's part of the reason we go to New Zealand, so that we don't have to navigate the different language barrier.
Check out Miami's Study Abroad website for more information about upcoming programs. MTN has been focusing on how Miami students have been handling the pandemic on and off campus, but MTN reporter Danielle Porter was able to reach out to Miami professors to get their perspective on COVID-19 and how it has affected their lives.
A mental fog continues to loom over Miami's campus, and students are not the only ones experiencing fatigue. Professors and staff are equally as exhausted. Along with the constant sanitization of desks, distancing practices, and mask wearing comes a great deal of stress. Nearly a year after the pandemic started, professors are feeling nostalgic about teaching large classes in person. Patricia Gallagher Newberry is back teaching in person, but not the way she had envisioned. Newberry finds herself dancing between virtual and in-person students, adhering to all COVID guidelines.
In the Zoom and in the room at the same time, I think, is the worst part of teaching in the pandemic. Because you literally, your head is spinning trying to serve these two different populations.
Students used to be elbow to elbow in the classroom, but distancing in an auditorium like this tends to restrict genuine human connection. Dr. Sam Morris, another professor, misses discussing with students in the classroom.
So I don't feel comfortable telling students to turn their cameras on, but at the same time, if I'm talking to a bunch of gray boxes for an hour, I tell my students, I just feel like a robot.
Even professors, undergraduate assistants, like Claudia Towns, feels the same frustration.
I definitely feel sometimes like I'm the UA police. Like I private message students and have to tell them to turn their cameras on.
While Zoom helps connect fully virtual students, professors still feel a disconnect. Professor Newberry spends more of her time preparing and less of her time sleeping as she continues adjusting to teaching during the pandemic.
There was a time when this was fun, where I was really jazzed to get in the classroom every morning.
A year ago, energy flowed through offices and classrooms. Nowadays, visitation is limited and morale is low. But Professor Newberry keeps a note on her office door in hopes of a return to normalcy.
MTN has had the opportunity to team up with different organizations around campus, such as the Miami Student, the Office of Student Activities, and MU Traditions. Catch our members helping out during the SEAL Awards and the Charter Day Ball. If you or your organization would like to collaborate with us here at MTN, please feel free to DM us on Instagram at MiamiMTN.
Congrats to the new student body president, Madeline Jett, and vice president, Aiden McKeon. We are looking forward to an exciting year with you.
That's all we have for today. Thank you for tuning in to our second show of the semester. Be sure to check back with us in April for more content. I'm Nia.
And I'm Hannah. And don't forget to follow us on social media at MiamiMTN.